Hey flight fans, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris and I'll be your instructor for the next 10 to 15 minutes. And we're going to be covering the ins and outs, the pragmatic approach to an ILS. I'm not going to be giving you the theory, just what you need to know to make things work. Setup, we are here at Echo Golf Papa November. This is Dundee Airport in Scotland, United Kingdom. And as all with all Orbx scenery, is pretty good. Lots of PBR stuff, lots of clutter, and this runway is about 4,500 feet, so fairly challenging. I've chosen the Carenado PA44 for my ride today. I'm a big fan of Carenado. You can say this is not study level, but I think it looks fantastic. It does what it needs to do, and if you haven't got a twin, because you've been flying, Cessnas, single engine piston, it's definitely a good stepping stone into your multi-engine training. In the cockpit, familiar Carenado, similar gauges. You've got your GPS over here, and the instruments we'll be interested in is going to be our attitude indicator and our course bar that also has the glide slope indicator. More on that later. Yes, ILS isn't the most exciting thing in the world, but it could help you get back to an airfield if the weather's bad, or it will back up your approaches on a visual day just to make sure you're definitely on the centerline, perhaps if the visibility is reduced. So a quick setup, or just the things you need to know before you start. So I use Google. If you went Echo Golf Papa November and charts, usually you'll find the airfield you want. Unfortunately with this one, not so much. So from my knowledge, if you Google NATS AIP for UK airfields, it's the one at the top. I'll navigate through for you. Come on, don't let me down. Here we go, aeronautical information. You want the information publications. I'll give you some options. Iraq 12, I think, is the latest. In fact, current Iraq. Let's try that. Then you get this page, worth bookmarking this. Then if we go to aerodromes, you can see where I'm going with this. Dundee, there you are, Dundee. And at the bottom of this list is charts related to an aerodrome. And here you've got the list of all the approaches you can do to this airfield. So ILS, localizer DME, RNP, so that's a GPS approach. And I'm going to do the runway, runway 09 ILS DME. Here we go. And this is the actual, no it's not, that's the VFR arrival chart. We want onto that one then. There we go, that looks more like it. Okay, so I'm not going to teach you what each of these bits mean. For interest, you can see the airfield's only 17 feet above the sea, which we know, we can see out the window. Things you need, the localizer frequency, 108.1, it's probably a bit small for you to read. You'll need the final approach track, which here is 092. We're going to set that on our course bar. In fact, you can see down here I've already set it, and I've set 1081 there. So those are the two things I need dialed in. Other information, if you were getting vectors, so you'd use air traffic to get you to a final approach position to intercept the localizer. You can expect them to do that 2,200 feet MSL. And then here, based on the range, so with this dialed in here, 1081, with this readout here I can see I'm at 0.3 nautical miles, but when that gets to 6.7, and we call it DME, distance measuring equipment, but essentially nautical miles, 6.7 nautical miles at 2,200 feet should be where I intercept the glide path, and that glide path is 3 degrees. Now if you're lower down, you can intercept it closer in, so at 4 miles, roughly 1,330 feet, 1,330 above mean sea level. If you really get into it, you can look at your category of aircraft. I don't know what category this is, I could Google it or look in the manual. But if we say it's category A, and here it's 297 feet MSL, is the point at which I make a decision to continue or abort the approach. So let's call it 300 feet. So at 300 feet, I'll look up, see if I can see the runway, and if I can, I'll land. Cool. So that is all the information you need from there. For context, where we are, Dundee is here, RAF Lucas is there, and then Edinburgh is down here. The only other thing I'll mention, if you haven't done this before, each system is slightly different. You might have GPS. If you don't have a GPS here, usually I'll have a screen like this. You can see the numbers are lower, so this will be your COM. But typically anything below 113 in terms of frequency will be an ILS, and I've got 1081 dialed in there. So if you find a screen like that, that could be where you enter it. But I know that we're using this screen. So you might find that you've got COM set, you try and change the frequency, and you're just changing this COM to get down to VLOC, push CV, toggles down to the standby frequency, dial what you need, and then the transfer switch is here. Whichever's in the top is active, and you can see it's picking up distance. It's not picking up much else, but it has given me a range 0.3 there, which kind of makes sense. You'd expect this course bar, so I set this 092, you'd expect this to deflect, although we're on the runway, so it makes sense we're on the centre line. And we'll come back to that shortly. So that's set up. We'll assume I've got clearance to take off. Probably need some flaps. Probably need some lights. I'm going to play around with the autopilot a little bit, but I think that's all we need. And I'm squawking. Cool. Let's go. Cool, so we're up and away, the RPM's good, the manifold pressure's sensible, the altitude's climbing up. Now to keep things expeditious, I'm going to try and level at about, well, 1300 feet. Speed is good. And you can see now that course deviation bar is going off to the north side. So I know that if I wanted to intercept the centre line, I'd have to turn north for that line to come back in the middle. In fact, now I'm here at 1,000 feet, let's just keep 1,000 feet. Has that worked? Don't let me down. Lovely stuff. Okay, you can now see the glide path is on the display, this being the horizontal situational indicator, HSI if you will, and I'm on autopilot. Whilst we're here, let's have a little look around outside. Just a lovely airplane to fly. If you hadn't owned it in prepared 3D, you know what I'm talking about. It's just, I'll have to shut the cow flaps as well whilst I remember it. If you watch the other videos or you know me, you know I don't really follow procedure. I kind of just make it up as I go along, but I do try and keep it fairly accurate. Okay, we can see now that we are 3.2 miles away at 1100 feet, we'll stick with that, and the glide path is now coming in. So we are now on our 3-degree glide path if we turned around. So I'm going to start reducing the speed, and I'm going to ask the airplane to fly us onto the localizer. Now this is one of those annoying airplanes that if you pull the power back below 15 you get that annoying warning. Okie doke. So we're now below the glide path because the little arrow for the glide path is above us, and that's how we always want to intercept a glide path, is from below. We've got a 45-degree cut, which is what we'd kind of expect air traffic to give us, and I've just ticked over to approach on my navigation, which means that as soon as the localizer starts coming in, the aircraft should, fingers crossed, navigate itself onto the center line. Now yes, I am cheating. Let's put the flaps, put some gear. So now you can see that we are getting towards the glide path, so the aircraft should start going down. And yes, I know I'm a bit late to configure, but the point is we're teaching you how to use this element here. Now the gear's down, I can bring the power right back, slow us down to maybe 80 knots. Give us some more flaps. Let's have a little look from outside. Look at that. Nice day. Okay, let's talk rates of descent. So if we cruise down at 80 knots, which is kind of what I'm aiming for, I'll assume my ground speed is 80 knots because the wind is light. So the tip here is if I take 80 knots and divide it by 2, which is 40, times that by 10, and for a 2.5 degree glide path you're looking at about 400 feet a minute. For 3 degree, maybe 450. And you can see the autopilot's keeping us nicely on the glide path at about 450 to 500 feet a minute, which is what I'd expect. There's not much else to say other than if you're flying this manually, you'll be wanting to pay a lot of attention to this device here. So if you set about 2 degrees nose low at the top of your descent, and then you can see what your rate of descent is based on your approach speed, and then adjusting it ever so slightly to correct based on where you are. Now I can see I'm drifting slightly left, so I'm going to switch off the autopilot. That's where it all goes wrong. And to correct, I'm going to keep my 500 feet rate of descent. Take, it's probably too much of a cut, but about 4 degrees left. You see the localizer, the course bar is centralizing. Now we've gone to 200 feet, but I should have made the decision at 300 feet. My decision is to land. Now if I follow this down, we'll land beam the Pappies. But as long as you don't duck under, as in point it towards the threshold at a crazy descent rate, then you can adjust your approach to whichever part of the runway you'd like. Not bad. And that, my friends, is flying an ILS. So we looked at the setup using, in this case, the charts from NATS AIP. We looked at the frequencies in the approach track. We looked at how to dial those into the instruments, how to use this GPS. One thing I didn't mention, probably should have done it a while ago, but I'm not going to re-record the video for it, is if you're having problems with this course deviation bar not working, a couple of things you can look at is A, make sure this frequency is correct and it's not in the standby. Make sure that if you've got a couple of different areas to set the frequency, that it's the one that's feeding this, so try and change them and fault find it. The third one is you've got an option here on CDI, and you've got GPS here, so if you've got a flight plan and you're navigating via GPS waypoints, that's what this will use. So it'll tell you how far off track you are from point to point. It won't pay any attention to your localizer. So if you press that and go to VLOC, you'll then find that if you're not perfectly on the center line, then this will then deflect as you'd expect it to. Here it'll do. And I should have switched the landing lights off, but hey ho. Other things to bear in mind is the deflection of this course deviation bar doesn't matter where you have the course set. And that's more to do with the construction of the ILS, how the radio frequencies work, how the beams and all that go together. But that's for a separate topic. And I think that's enough. So that's ILS in a simple aircraft. It gets more complicated when you're in big airliner type things, when you're using FMS, so the computer system to do it all. But this is the quick, let's have a go in a general aviation aircraft. Cool. If you're still with me, thanks very much for bearing with. Remember, like, subscribe, alerts, all that good stuff helps me out and keeps me motivated. If you want to put anything in the comments about how you do it, if you see me do something wrong, call me out. Or if you can see techniques that you want to use, then let's all learn together. So put it in the comments below. And with that in mind, happy flying and see you next time.